The courtroom had already begun to empty. Papers were being gathered. Chairs scraped softly against polished floors. Attorneys whispered final remarks to clients while deputies moved casually near the exits, preparing to close another long day inside courtroom 7B of the Fulton County Justice Center. At exactly 4:43 p.m., Judge Eleanor Whitmore adjusted her glasses, looked down at the file in front of her, and prepared to end a case that had consumed nearly 8 months of hearings. From every legal angle, it was over. The evidence had been reviewed. Witnesses had testified. Arguments had been exhausted. And unless something extraordinary happened in the next few minutes, Marcus Reed, a black single father sitting alone at the defense table, was about to lose custody of his 9-year-old daughter forever. Marcus sat perfectly still. Not because he was calm, because after months of fighting, there was simply nothing left inside him to move. Across the courtroom, seated beside her legal team, was Vanessa Reed, Marcus's ex-wife. Impeccably dressed in a cream-colored suit, Vanessa looked composed, confident, and almost relieved. Beside her sat attorney Charles Hanley, one of the most expensive family law attorneys in Georgia. Hanley had built an entire career representing wealthy clients in high-profile custody disputes. And so far, he had done exactly what he had been hired to do. Win. Judge Whitmore folded her hands. "Mr. Reed," she said carefully, "the court has reviewed all submitted evidence, witness testimony, psychological evaluations, school reports, and financial disclosures." The judge paused. "The court recognizes your obvious love for your daughter. However, based upon the evidence presented, I am prepared to grant primary physical custody to Mrs. Vanessa Reed." A soft murmur spread across the gallery. Marcus lowered his eyes. He had expected those words. Still, hearing them felt like being struck in the chest. His attorney, public defender Samantha Ellis, quietly placed a hand on his arm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Marcus didn't answer, because at that exact moment, all he could think about was his daughter. Mia, 9 years old, curly hair, gap-toothed smile, obsessed with astronomy, terrified of thunderstorms. The little girl who still insisted on leaving the hallway light on every night because space is already dark enough. The little girl who had once wrapped her tiny arms around his neck after kindergarten and whispered, "Daddy, promise you'll always come back for me." Marcus had kept every promise he'd ever made to his daughter. Except, apparently, this one. Judge Whitmore looked down again. "If there are no additional matters before the court, I will issue the final custody order effective immediately." Vanessa's attorney stood. "No further matters, Your Honor." The judge nodded. She reached for her pen. And then Marcus stood. Slowly. Every head turned. His attorney looked alarmed. "Marcus?" Samantha whispered. "Sit down." But Marcus remained standing. His hands trembled slightly. "Your Honor," he said quietly. Judge Whitmore looked up. "Mr. Reed, unless your counsel has additional admissible evidence, the court has reached its decision." Marcus swallowed. "I know." The judge waited. Marcus looked toward Vanessa. For the first time in the entire proceeding, she couldn't meet his eyes. "I only need 60 seconds. Hanley immediately stood. "Objection, Your Honor. The evidentiary phase has concluded." Judge Whitmore sighed. "Mr. Reed, this case has already extended well beyond its scheduled timeline." Marcus nodded. "I understand." He reached slowly into the inside pocket of his worn jacket. Instantly, 2 deputies straightened. Family court could become unpredictable. Judge Whitmore's voice hardened. "Mr. Reed, remove your hand slowly." Marcus complied. In his hand was not a weapon. Just a photograph. Old. Bent at the corners. Worn from years of being carried. The entire courtroom watched silently. Marcus looked at the photo for several seconds before speaking. "My daughter gave me this picture 3 years ago." Hanley stood again. "Your Honor." "Sit down, Mr. Hanley," Judge Whitmore said sharply. Something in Marcus's face had changed. Even the judge could see it. This wasn't a man trying to manipulate the court. This was a father standing on the edge of losing everything. Judge Whitmore leaned back. "You have 1 minute, Mr. Reed." Marcus nodded. He carefully walked toward the bench. A deputy intercepted him halfway. Marcus handed the photograph over without resistance. The deputy passed it to the clerk. The clerk handed it to Judge Whitmore. The judge looked down and frowned. The photograph appeared ordinary. At first, it showed Marcus and Mia sitting on a living room floor. Christmas morning. Wrapping paper everywhere. Mia couldn't have been older than 6. She was laughing. Marcus was holding a half-built telescope. Judge Whitmore looked up. Mr. Reed, I fail to see. Turn it over, Marcus said quietly. The judge hesitated, then flipped the photograph. Everything changed. The courtroom became silent. Completely silent. Judge Whitmore read the writing on the back once. Then again. Her expression shifted. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly. Attorney Hanley noticed immediately. Your Honor? Judge Whitmore didn't answer. Instead, she looked directly at Vanessa. Mrs. Reed. Vanessa suddenly looked nervous. Yes, Your Honor? Did you know this photograph existed? Vanessa's face lost color. For just a second. But in a courtroom, 1 second can say everything. I'm not sure what photograph you're referring to. Judge Whitmore's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Hanley immediately intervened. Your Honor, with respect, this is highly irregular. We have no foundation for. Mr. Hanley, the judge interrupted coldly. I strongly advise you not to interrupt me again. The attorney sat down, stunned. Judge Whitmore stared once more at the photograph. Then at Marcus. Mr. Reed. Yes, Your Honor. Where did you obtain this? Marcus answered without hesitation. Mia gave it to me. When? The night before Child Protective Services removed her from my home. A murmur swept through the gallery. Because that was the event that had destroyed Marcus's case. 6 months earlier, CPS had removed Mia after allegations of neglect surfaced. The allegations were devastating. Repeated absences from school. Emotional distress. Claims that Marcus regularly left Mia alone overnight. The investigation had escalated quickly. Too quickly. Within days, temporary custody had been granted to Vanessa. Marcus had denied every allegation. Every single one. But evidence had continued appearing. School records. Witness statements. Social worker reports. Even Mia herself had initially confirmed parts of the story. And family court, unlike criminal court, required a much lower burden of proof. By the time Marcus realized what was happening, the narrative had already hardened. Single father. Financial struggles. Long work hours. Possible neglect. Case closed. At least, that's what everyone believed. Judge Whitmore looked back at the photograph. The handwriting on the back was clearly a child's. Written in purple crayon. Large uneven letters. But one sentence had been underlined 3 separate times. The sentence read, Daddy, if Mommy gets mad again, don't let them make me lie this time. Silence. Absolute silence. Vanessa suddenly stood. Your Honor, children write all sorts of things. Sit down, Mrs. Reed. Vanessa sat. Slowly. Judge Whitmore looked toward Marcus. Why was this never submitted as evidence? Marcus looked down. Because I didn't find it until 2 days ago. The judge frowned. Marcus continued. I keep all of Mia's drawings in a storage box. His voice began to crack. After the last hearing, I was packing away some of her things because I thought. He stopped. Collected himself. Because I thought I'd lost her. No one moved. I found the photograph hidden inside one of her astronomy books. Judge Whitmore studied him carefully. Why would your daughter hide it? Marcus looked toward the empty witness chair where Mia had once testified. Because she knew somebody would take it. Vanessa abruptly stood again. This is ridiculous. Her composure was beginning to fracture. It's a child's scribble. It proves nothing. Judge Whitmore said nothing. Instead, she looked toward the court-appointed guardian ad litem. Attorney Rebecca Sloan. Sloan had represented Mia's interests throughout the case. Ms. Sloan. Yes, Your Honor. Did Mia ever indicate she had been pressured regarding her testimony? Sloan hesitated. The hesitation lasted only 2 seconds. But it changed everything. Your Honor. Every person in the courtroom leaned forward. Sloan adjusted her glasses. There was one incident. Vanessa turned sharply. Rebecca. Sloan ignored her. Approximately 4 months ago, Mia asked me whether children could get in trouble for telling the wrong truth. The room froze. Judge Whitmore's expression darkened. What exactly did she mean? Sloan swallowed. I asked her to explain. And? She became extremely upset and refused to continue. Marcus closed his eyes. Because suddenly, pieces that had never made sense were beginning to fit together. Judge Whitmore looked back at Vanessa. For the first time since proceedings began, the judge no longer looked certain. She looked concerned. Very concerned. Then the courtroom doors opened. A bailiff hurried inside carrying a folder. He approached the bench immediately. The judge opened it, read the first page, and went completely still. When she finally looked up, her voice had changed. Mrs. Reed. Vanessa's face went pale. Yes. Judge Whitmore slowly removed her glasses. Would you care to explain why the school attendance records submitted by your legal team appear to have been altered? The question hung in the courtroom like smoke. Judge Eleanor Whitmore did not blink. Mrs. Reed, she repeated, her voice calm but unmistakably firm. Would you care to explain why the school attendance records submitted by your legal team appear to have been altered? For several seconds, no one spoke. Vanessa Reed remained standing. The color had drained almost completely from her face. Beside her, Attorney Charles Hanley recovered first. Your Honor, he said quickly, rising from his seat, I believe there must be some misunderstanding. Judge Whitmore looked down at the folder the bailiff had delivered moments earlier. This document was submitted less than 20 minutes ago by Fulton Elementary School in response to a subpoena issued by the court yesterday. The judge raised the papers slightly. These records do not match the versions previously entered into evidence. A murmur spread through the gallery. Marcus stared across the room. For months, those attendance records had been one of the strongest arguments against him. According to the documents submitted earlier in the proceedings, Mia had missed 23 school days while in Marcus's care. 23. Enough to establish a pattern of neglect. Enough to seriously damage any custody case. Judge Whitmore continued. The original school records indicate that 12 of those absences occurred while the child was residing with Mrs. Reed. Silence. Complete silence. Samantha Ellis slowly turned toward Marcus. Marcus looked as shocked as everyone else. Hanley adjusted his tie. Your Honor, I was provided those records directly by my client. If discrepancies exist, we welcome clarification. The judge nodded slowly. Clarification is exactly what this court intends to obtain. She looked toward the clerk. Has Principal Avery arrived? Yes, Your Honor. Bring her in. 5 minutes later, Principal Denise Avery entered the courtroom. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and the unmistakable expression of someone deeply unhappy to be involved. After being sworn in, she took the stand. Judge Whitmore spoke first. Principal Avery, did your office provide attendance records for Mia Reed? Yes, Your Honor. Have you reviewed both versions currently before the court? I have. Are they identical? No. The answer landed heavily. Hanley immediately stood. Principal Avery, could these discrepancies simply result from clerical errors? Avery looked directly at him. No. She reached into her folder. Our attendance system is digital. Every modification creates a timestamp and an access record. The entire courtroom became attentive. Who accessed Mia Reed's attendance file? Judge Whitmore asked. Avery opened another document. The records show that no employee at Fulton Elementary modified Mia's attendance history. Hanley frowned. Then how were changes made? Avery hesitated. Through a parent access portal. Every eye turned toward Vanessa. Avery continued. Parents may submit absence explanations electronically. However, they cannot directly alter attendance classifications. Can you explain these discrepancies? The judge asked. Yes. Avery nodded. Several absence explanations submitted on behalf of Mr. Reed claimed Mia had been left home alone or arrived unsupervised. Marcus frowned. I never submitted anything like that. Avery looked at him sympathetically. I know. The courtroom stirred again. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. How do you know? Because the submissions came from Mrs. Reed's parent account. Vanessa immediately stood. That's impossible. Sit down, Mrs. Reed, Judge Whitmore ordered. Vanessa sat. But barely. Principal Avery continued. The account activity logs identify the IP address used to submit each explanation. She paused. All disputed submissions originated from a device registered to Mrs. Vanessa Reed. Marcus slowly lowered himself back into his chair. Samantha placed a hand over her mouth. For months, Marcus had questioned how certain allegations had appeared so detailed. Now he was beginning to understand. Judge Whitmore looked toward Hanley. Mr. Hanley, were you aware of this? Hanley looked genuinely stunned. No, Your Honor. And for the first time in the entire proceeding, everyone believed him. The judge called a brief recess. When court resumed 30 minutes later, another witness took the stand. Rebecca Sloan, Mia's guardian ad litem. Throughout the custody battle, Sloan had remained professionally neutral. But today, something about her demeanor seemed different. More serious. Judge Whitmore addressed her directly. Ms. Sloan, have you ever had concerns regarding possible coaching or influence involving Mia Reed? Sloan hesitated, then nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Vanessa closed her eyes. Sloane continued. I did not initially report those concerns because they were inconclusive. What concerns? The judge asked. During multiple interviews, Mia displayed unusual behavioral patterns. Please explain. Children recalling genuine experiences generally describe events naturally. Sloane adjusted her glasses. Mia often appeared to be reciting. The courtroom remained silent. Reciting? Yes. Sloane nodded. Several times, Mia repeated identical phrases word for word across separate interviews conducted weeks apart. Samantha Ellis exchanged a glance with Marcus. Sloane continued. More concerning, Mia frequently paused before answering and asked whether she was saying it right. Judge Whitmore frowned. Did she ever explain what she meant? No. Sloane looked down. But she often became visibly distressed whenever discussions involved her father. Marcus looked away. He already knew why. Because Mia had been carrying something. Something too heavy for a 9-year-old. Then came the witness no one expected. Private investigator Thomas Briggs. Briggs had been hired by Vanessa's legal team 6 months earlier to conduct surveillance regarding Marcus's parenting habits. He took the stand looking deeply uncomfortable. After being sworn in, Samantha Ellis approached. Mr. Briggs, did you conduct surveillance on my client? Yes. Did you ever observe Marcus Reed leaving Mia unsupervised overnight? Briggs shifted in his chair. No. The gallery erupted in whispers. Judge Whitmore struck her gavel. Order. Samantha continued. Yet your report implied otherwise. Briggs sighed heavily. My original report did not. The entire room froze. What do you mean? Samantha asked. Briggs removed his glasses. My original report concluded that Mr. Reed demonstrated attentive and consistent parenting. Marcus stared. Briggs continued. After submitting the report, I was contacted and asked to provide additional language emphasizing potential concerns. Samantha spoke carefully. By whom? Briggs looked toward Vanessa. He didn't need to answer. Everyone understood. Hanley immediately objected. Your Honor. Overruled. Briggs continued. I declined. What happened next? I was informed my services would no longer be required. The silence inside courtroom 7B became almost unbearable. Judge Whitmore removed her glasses. She looked tired, profoundly tired, because family court judges see many things. But seeing a child potentially manipulated against a loving parent never becomes easier. The hearing continued for another hour. By the end, the case looked nothing like it had that morning. Marcus had entered the courthouse expecting to lose his daughter. Now, for the first time in months, something unfamiliar had begun to emerge. Hope. Very cautious hope. As proceedings neared conclusion, Judge Whitmore spoke. This court has serious concerns regarding the integrity of evidence previously submitted. She looked directly at both attorneys. Accordingly, I am ordering an immediate forensic review of all documentary evidence. She paused. In addition, this court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Vanessa looked devastated. Marcus looked overwhelmed. Judge Whitmore continued. Until this review is complete, no final custody determination will be issued. Marcus closed his eyes. No final decision. For the first time in 8 months, he had not lost. The judge struck her gavel. Court is adjourned. As people slowly began leaving the courtroom, Marcus remained seated. Samantha sat beside him. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Samantha broke the silence. You kept fighting. Marcus looked toward the photograph still resting on the evidence table. No, he said quietly. He smiled sadly. She did. Outside the courthouse, reporters had already begun gathering. Inside, Judge Eleanor Whitmore remained alone in her chambers long after everyone else had left. The photograph lay on her desk. Bent corners, purple crayon, a child's handwriting. The judge read the note one more time. Then she reached for the phone. Get me every interview transcript involving Mia Reed, she said. She paused. And clear tomorrow's schedule. Because tomorrow, this case was going to look very different. The courtroom looked different now. Not physically. The same polished wood. The same flags. The same rows of benches. But the atmosphere had changed completely. Just 48 hours earlier, Marcus Reed had walked into this room expecting to lose his daughter forever. Now, everyone in courtroom 7B understood that this case had become something else entirely. What had once seemed like a straightforward custody dispute had transformed into an investigation into fraud, manipulation, and possibly something far worse. Judge Eleanor Whitmore entered promptly at 9 a.m. No conversations continued once she sat down. Even the reporters lining the back row fell silent. "Be seated." Her voice carried an unusual heaviness. The previous afternoon had ended with explosive testimony. School attendance records had been confirmed as altered. A private investigator hired by Vanessa Reed had admitted under oath that several witness statements had been selectively edited before being submitted to the court. And perhaps most damaging of all, the court-appointed forensic specialist had testified that Mia Reed had shown multiple behavioral indicators consistent with coaching. Judge Whitmore adjusted her glasses. "The court has reviewed all newly submitted evidence overnight." She looked first at Vanessa. Mrs. Reed no longer resembled the composed executive who had entered the courtroom months earlier. She looked exhausted. Her attorney, Charles Hanley, looked worse. Hanley had spent most of the night trying unsuccessfully to contain the damage. Across the room, Marcus sat quietly beside Samantha Ellis. He looked tired, but for the first time in months, he did not look defeated. He simply looked like a father waiting for truth to finally catch up. Judge Whitmore spoke again. "Before we proceed further, this court intends to hear directly from one person." She looked toward the side door. "Bring Mia Reed in." Marcus immediately sat straighter. The side door opened. 9-year-old Mia Reed entered slowly, accompanied by guardian ad litem Rebecca Sloan. Mia looked small in the oversized blue cardigan she always wore when nervous. But when she saw Marcus, something changed. "Daddy." The word escaped before anyone could stop it. Marcus smiled softly. "Hey, Bug." Mia smiled back. The entire courtroom saw it. Saw how immediate it was. How natural. How automatic. Judge Whitmore noticed too. Mia was guided to the witness chair. Unlike her previous testimony months earlier, there would be no attorneys questioning her directly. Only the judge. Only simple questions. Only truth. Judge Whitmore softened her voice. "Mia, do you know why you're here today?" Mia nodded. "To tell the truth." The judge smiled gently. "That's exactly right." She paused. "Mia, has anyone ever told you what to say in court?" Mia looked down. Silence. Rebecca Sloan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay." Mia's eyes slowly moved toward her mother. Vanessa looked away first. That alone said more than words ever could. Mia whispered, "Mommy did." Complete silence. Marcus closed his eyes. Not because he was surprised, because hearing it from his daughter hurt more than he had expected. Judge Whitmore remained calm. "What did your mother tell you to say?" Mia twisted her fingers together. "That Daddy left me alone." "Were you left alone?" Mia shook her head. "No." "Then why did you say you were?" Tears appeared instantly. "Because Mommy said if I didn't, Daddy would take me away forever." Vanessa suddenly stood. "Mia, sweetheart." "Sit down, Mrs. Reed." Judge Whitmore's voice was ice. Vanessa sat. Mia continued crying quietly. Judge Whitmore waited patiently. After several moments, Mia spoke again. "Mommy said grown-ups sometimes have to tell special lies." A sound escaped somewhere in the gallery. Someone crying. No one looked. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. "Mia, why did you write the note behind the photograph?" Mia wiped her eyes. "Because Daddy always keeps my pictures." Her small voice trembled. "I knew he'd find it someday." Marcus lowered his head. There are moments when pain and love become impossible to separate. This was one of them. The questioning ended shortly afterward. Mia was escorted out, but the damage had already been done. Not to Marcus. To Vanessa. Judge Whitmore recessed for 30 minutes. When court reconvened, she spoke immediately. "This court finds substantial evidence that prior testimony and documentary submissions were intentionally manipulated." She looked directly at Vanessa. "The court is particularly disturbed by evidence suggesting emotional coercion of a minor child." Vanessa sat motionless. No expression remained on her face. Judge Whitmore continued. "Family court exists for one purpose. The welfare of the child. Not revenge. Not leverage. Not punishment between former spouses." She paused. "Over the last 8 months, this court came dangerously close to permanently separating a child from a loving parent based upon information now shown to be materially unreliable." No one moved. That failure rests partially on this court. Every attorney in the room looked surprised. Judges rarely spoke this way. Judge Whitmore continued. "The legal system depends upon honesty. When honesty disappears, justice becomes impossible." She turned pages. "Mr. Marcus Reed." Marcus stood. "The evidence demonstrates that despite financial hardship, demanding work hours, and limited resources, You have consistently acted in your daughter's best interests. Marcus swallowed. Judge Whitmore looked directly at him. This court further finds that your relationship with your daughter is exceptionally strong and deeply protective. Marcus looked down. Years from now, he would remember those words. Not because they restored his rights. Because somebody in authority had finally seen him. Really seen him. Judge Whitmore continued. Accordingly, temporary custody orders previously issued are hereby vacated. Marcus stopped breathing. Primary physical custody of Mia Reed is awarded immediately to her father, Marcus Reed. Marcus closed his eyes. Across the courtroom, Samantha Ellis quietly cried. Judge Whitmore wasn't finished. Mrs. Vanessa Reed shall receive supervised visitation pending psychological evaluation and further review. Vanessa finally spoke. Very quietly. No. Judge Whitmore looked at her. Excuse me? Vanessa's composure finally shattered. No. She stood abruptly. You don't understand. Tears streamed down her face. None of you understand. The bailiffs moved slightly. Judge Whitmore remained calm. Mrs. Reed, sit down. But Vanessa continued. You think I did this because I hated him? She pointed toward Marcus. I loved him. Marcus looked stunned. I loved him and he chose her. Nobody understood. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You all think this was about custody. She shook her head. It wasn't. Silence. When Marcus's construction company offered him a promotion in Dallas 2 years ago, he was going to move. Marcus frowned. We talked about it for weeks. Vanessa looked at him. And you said no. Marcus slowly nodded. Mia didn't want to leave Georgia. Vanessa's voice cracked. No. She shook her head violently. You stayed because Dana asked you to. The courtroom froze. Marcus went completely still. Dana, his late wife, Mia's mother, dead for 6 years. Vanessa continued crying. Even after she was gone, you still chose her. Understanding spread slowly. Painfully. Vanessa had never been competing with Marcus. She had been competing with a memory. An impossible competition. Marcus stared at her. For the first time in months, not with anger. With sadness. Deep sadness. Vanessa lowered herself back into her chair. I knew if Mia stayed with you. She broke completely. I'd always come second. Nobody spoke. Because heartbreak does not excuse cruelty. But sometimes it explains it. Judge Whitmore recessed once more. The hearing was over. The legal battle had ended. But healing would take much longer. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood outside Mia's elementary school. Exactly where he had stood almost every afternoon before the custody fight began. The final bell rang. Children flooded outside. Then he saw her. Mia. Backpack bouncing. Curly hair wild. Searching. The moment she saw him, she ran. Marcus dropped to one knee. She collided with him at full speed. He held her tightly. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. As they walked toward the parking lot hand in hand, Mia looked up. Daddy. Yeah, Bug. You're always coming back now, right? Marcus smiled. Forever. Months later, Judge Whitmore would quietly institute new evidentiary safeguards in all contested custody cases involving minors. The photograph remained framed on Marcus's kitchen wall. Bent corners. Purple crayon. Simple words written by a little girl who trusted her father enough to hide the truth where she knew he would someday find it. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive through dramatic speeches. Sometimes it arrives through the courage of a child holding a crayon. And sometimes all it takes to change everything is one photograph. 6 months later, life looked almost normal again. Almost. Marcus Reed had learned that after a custody battle, normal was a different thing entirely. Some wounds healed. Others simply became quieter. The small apartment he shared with Mia felt alive again. Astronomy books had returned to the living room. Colored pencils once again covered the kitchen table. And every night at precisely 8:30 p.m., Marcus still left the hallway light on. Just like he had promised. Mia was doing better. Much better. The nightmares had become less frequent. Her teachers reported that she was smiling again, laughing again, being a child again. But some changes were impossible to ignore. She no longer liked court buildings. She became anxious whenever adults raised their voices. And whenever someone asked her if she was okay, she always looked at Marcus before answering. Children remember more than adults realize. Marcus knew that, because he remembered too. He remembered every hearing, every accusation, every sleepless night, every moment he had sat alone wondering whether his daughter would someday believe the things that had been said about him. Those memories would stay with him forever. But so would something else. The moment Mia ran across that school parking lot and into his arms. That moment had made everything worth surviving. Vanessa Reed disappeared from public life. Following the court's order, she completed an extensive psychological evaluation and began therapy. For several months, her visits with Mia remained supervised. At first, Mia barely spoke during those visits. She was polite, quiet, careful, like a child trying not to make a mistake. But healing is strange. Sometimes it begins in silence. Over time, small conversations returned. Then smiles. Then laughter. Very slowly, mother and daughter began rebuilding something. Not what they had before. Something new. Something honest. Marcus never stood in the way. He could have. Many people told him he should. But Marcus understood something important. Mia deserved truth, not revenge. And despite everything, Vanessa was still her mother. One rainy Thursday evening nearly a year after the trial, Marcus received an unexpected phone call. It was Vanessa. He almost didn't answer. Almost. Hello. There was a long silence. Then Vanessa spoke. I wanted to thank you. Marcus frowned. For what? For not teaching Mia to hate me. Marcus looked through the kitchen window where Mia sat at the table doing homework. He answered honestly. She already lost enough. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally Vanessa said quietly, I was wrong. Marcus closed his eyes. Those words had cost her something. He knew that. I know, he said softly. Another silence. Then she said something Marcus would never forget. I thought winning meant keeping her. A tear slipped down Vanessa's voice. But all I really did was lose both of you. The call ended shortly afterward. Marcus stood in the kitchen for a long time. Sometimes accountability arrives in courtrooms. Sometimes it arrives much later. Alone. In silence. 3 months after that call, Marcus received a letter. Not from Vanessa. From Judge Eleanor Whitmore. Handwritten. Short. Professional. Personal. It read, Mr. Reed, during my 32 years on the bench, I have presided over thousands of family cases. Very few have stayed with me. Yours will. Your perseverance changed not only the outcome for your daughter, but also how this court now approaches testimony involving children. Because of your case, additional safeguards have been permanently implemented. Thank you for refusing to give up. Respectfully, Judge Eleanor Whitmore. Marcus folded the letter carefully, then placed it beside the photograph. The photograph. The one with bent corners. The one hidden inside an astronomy book. The one that had changed everything. It remained framed in the living room. Visitors occasionally asked about it. Marcus always smiled. It's the most important picture I've ever owned. Years later, Mia would tell people that her father saved her life. Marcus always corrected her. No, he'd say. You saved both of ours. Because that was the truth. A little girl had been placed in an impossible situation. Asked to choose between parents. Asked to carry secrets no child should ever carry. And somehow, through fear and confusion and heartbreak, she had still found a way to leave the truth behind. One photograph. One message written in purple crayon. One child refusing to let a lie become permanent. Marcus often thought about how close they had come. How easily things could have ended differently. How a single photograph discovered 2 days later might never have been found at all. Life changes that way sometimes. Quietly. Without warning. A forgotten box. An old picture. A child's handwritten note. And suddenly everything changes. Because truth has a strange quality. It can be delayed. Buried. Ignored. Even manipulated. But real truth has a way of surviving. Waiting patiently. Until somebody is finally brave enough to look at it. And in the end, that was what this story had always been about. Not courts. Not custody. Not even a photograph. It was about a father who refused to stop fighting. A little girl who refused to stop loving. And the simple, extraordinary power of telling the truth when staying silent would be easier. Marcus turned off the hallway light at 10 p.m. that night. He checked on Mia one last time. She was asleep. One arm wrapped around her favorite astronomy book. Marcus smiled, then quietly closed the door. This time, knowing with absolute certainty, he would always come back.